Hey folks, we're going to continue our work here with mapping Light of Xaryxis. So give me a hot moment here to check my signal, make sure that I'm live and up and running. Here to check my signal. Alright, I've got my raspy morning voice on, so you know that everything's going to be spicy as peppers. Like and subscribe. We're making maps here. This is the cover that we built for the upcoming Ron stream. It is early. Here you go. What you see on screen is the cover that we built about 8 episodes ago, not 10 episodes ago. The cover that we built for the Spelljammer Combat Exploration book that we are going to be publishing on DMsGuild. I'm just taking a moment here to hit my Discord signals. So I just posted to Twitter that I'm live. So if you want to follow and stay up with me, you can follow me on Twitter. You'll know when I go live. I just went live now, so if you subscribe, you always get that little blurb at the top of the page. Hey, Phil Kearney's live. I'm Phil Kearney. So we're making maps, we're making art, we're expanding on the Spelljammer combat and exploration mechanics for basically piloting a ship and other shenanigans in Spelljammer 5e. So I'm going to switch gears here to Photoshop. So that's the cover. Let me know if you like it. And here's the asteroids that we're working on. Where's my pen? We're going to continue work on this. We're just strafing through the document here. So this is our next row that we're working on right now. So we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more rows out of the 20. Well, out of 19, because once we get to this last row, we're gonna work on this rock in this row regardless. So we only have 19 out of the 20 that we had to work on. We only have 8 left. So I'm gonna grab a cup of coffee real quick. While I do that, if you guys don't mind, check out the link that I have in the description down below to the DMs Guild. Got a bunch of books that I've already built in the past. They're all 100% preview. You can read them cover to cover before buying them, so you understand what you're looking at, and then you decide that you like them. You can support me. All my publications are like that. So once this publishes, you'll be able to see this 100% preview as well. And those that use it or appreciate the work or like the art, they'll end up buying it. So just check out the stuff. If it's useful to you, get on board with it. It's 6:15 here in Seattle. It's early. Got my old man bedtime so I can get up early and do my morning streams. So that's the kind of workflow process we're in. So we're going to hit the clock for 20 minutes and we're just going to keep punching through stuff. So I have, like usual, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. Hopefully I don't stick my foot in my mouth or anything. But we're over here, we're pushing pixels, yo. So I'm going to Windows, let's get to my tools. Windows. Tools. We got about an hour and a half that we can kick through here. Before I go back and pay my pound of flesh to the man, and then I'll be off stream today. I've got development work to do for. We have revisions from the playtesting that we've been doing. We got some revisions that we have to make here to the roles. We need to simplify the roles. There's too many. We've given you too many options. Honestly, we need to narrow down. Probably the roles to only 3 roles, like pilot, ship support, siege, and then siege weapon command, and then the act of commanding squadrons of additional ships, be they Spelljammer ships or flying Infernal machines. That can get. I don't think we need to continue having that standing out as a separate role. I think that's a good way to define things. We're trying to restructure things, make everything make more sense, make it easier for folks to digest. Because the augur and the support role really are kind of the same role, and it's not like we need to add spell casting under the support role. That's just something that can be done using any of the Spelljammer devices, be it a helm, an orrery, or an arcane cannon. All three of those allow you to sync up and amplify spells to a larger scale, so that you can continue to use your spell pool to affect enemies, whether they're on deck or across the sea. Hey, Chronic Man, good to see you, dude. How you doing? So we're working on asteroids right now, and I'm just going to ramble on. But yeah, the playtesting has been going really, really well. So the action economy is playing out. We can be a little bit more generous on movement. These vehicles have a hard cap of 10,000 miles per round, and that doesn't really allocate for movement. It's just if you take 100 million miles per day and you break it down into 6-second chunks, it's 10,000 miles. So more accurately, the maximum scale of combat that you can have in Spelljammer is 1,000 miles per square, because that allows you to have your 5 or 6 steps of movement, and then a dash action to take another 5 or 6 steps of movement. That gets you 10 squares of movement in a round, which takes you up to 10,000 miles per round, and you can fudge it with the per round basis. So like you got your rogue with dash, and if you've got a ship that can move 6 squares, like a light wood or ceramic ship that's light and fast to move, then you could potentially get 18 squares in a round. That's no different from what you can do with 5-foot scale combat. If you were to be able to sustain that for 24 hours, it would eventually outclock the 100 million miles per day. But combat, tactical combat, can be a little more loose than overland movement, which is the primary difference that we see there. So we're using a highlight. The reference that we're using here, we're pulling highlights off of this highlight. We're going to add stardust and all this stuff into the background of this once we're done with the asteroids and we have our lighting figured out. But we're pulling these highlights off of these asteroids and dropping them. We're using Topolus Tower as the center of lights, and we'll have like stars and stuff underneath it here to help complement that. But the background is really just the background. And if you haven't seen this before, then oops, fix that. We'll collapse that real quick. There's a color. Here's a black and white version, which is already ready to go. Ready. So this is great for print at home. It's a 20 by 20 grid, so you can break this up into 4 10 by 10 grids using an 11 by 17 page. You'll have a 1/2 inch margin, so you can have the 10-inch square, and then you'll have 6 inches of border at the top where I can take individual asteroids and just drop them up here, and I can take this asteroid here and then place it here on the map, and then like this one, like I can have a bunch of just little asteroids set up here on the sidebar to fill in the rest of this 11 by 17 page space, so that when you print it, it'll print out like, it'll be individual pages. So each page will be something more like this is the actual scale that we'd be looking at, and then you put some asteroids there, and then you got a second page. You can go put some asteroids in there. So 4 pages, 10 by 10 each. So that's the idea behind that, and we're doing the full color version here for virtual tabletop, and just to make our book look pretty. So black and white, good to go. We're gonna finish up the color here as I've been rambling, and then we'll keep on keeping on. After this, we're gonna do the asteroid belt for the I think it's chapter 3, the Illithid derelict asteroid belt. I'm not going to do the Illithid derelict itself. We already have a map of Illithids provided to us by Spelljammer's Adventures in Space, so I don't need to create. And there's honestly a lot of third-party people that are creating Spelljammer ships with a lot of detail. I would encourage anyone grabbing those. I might create some ship maps if necessary at some point, but I just feel like there's enough access to ship maps that this shouldn't really be my priority. But the static asteroid map for the Momma adventure, and then once we get into into chapter 3, the salvage hunt, you get ambushed by a Neogi spaceship. Spoiler alerts. So and then it chases you through the asteroid field, and then, as written in the adventure, space cops show up and scare off the Neogi, and then you go to the Rock of Brawl and continue on with your quest giving. But I think it'd be more fun to actually fight the Neogi spider, night spider. And so we're going to, after we finish building this, we'll go at the 500-foot scale. This is 50-foot scale squares. We'll go to the asteroid field out there and do a 500-foot scale so that you can do a run and gun and dogfight combat through an asteroid field, so that you can potentially smash this night spider into different rocks to disrupt the concentration of its pilot, so you can either get away or get the drop on them, etc. So, hey Hornetico, it's nice to see you, dude. Yep. So we're going to simplify the rules. The amount of detail that's there is fantastic, but obviously we're experiencing decision paralysis just because there's too many options. We can simplify that, and we're going to up speeds for ships to be a minimum of 4 squares per move, like metal and stone vessels like the Scorpion you guys had used. That's going to have a base move of 4 because of the armor, but light wood ships like Star Moths and like squid ships and stuff, we'll up them to 6, so that it'll roughly reflect the light movement will have the same sort of base movement that you would have in light armor. So we'll keep the light armor, medium armor, heavy armor effects on ship armor, and just allow folks to move more squares per round to encourage better engagement. That's working out. It's proving difficult. In the link down below in my Patreon, there's a link to the. I need to rearrange my links. I need to create a new link for the Spelljammer playtest content. But the way that it's structured currently, it's at the back end of the in command document that's in the Patreon link that you can look at for free. But it starts on page 108, so I need to tear that out as a separate piece to make this just a little bit more digestible for people that are just strolling in casually, instead of just getting dogpiled by 180 pages of document to chew on. But yeah, the stuff is there, and so we need to clean up how it's formatted. Like there's convolution between like what am I trying to put? The roles and like weapons and how to do like the mechanics of the game and the roles of characters performing those roles is kind of convoluted right now. I'm trying to clean it up so it's a reader clean, so things are separated a little bit easier. Like spellcasting can be its own section. It doesn't need to be a part of support. We don't need a support role. We can support is like anyone can help. And support isn't relegated simply to spellcasters, or spellcasting isn't specifically support. So we can break up how that stuff all interacts in the document so it's an easier read. That's going to take a little time, so I'm going to be no playtesting for the next couple weeks as I get that stuff sorted out. And I'm hoping to, and I'm putting hours in off camera to clean up that documentation so that we can hopefully get that thing rolled out here into edits before the end of the month, and we'll have a little extra time till the end of the year to continue doing playtest stuff for the actual adventure, which we're very, very close to being done with. We only really have 2 combat scenarios: this Momma map and the Nautiloid, the Night Spider chase in Chapter 3. Those are really the only 2 encounters that we need to playtest left, and we'll be doing that at the beginning of December. Ramble on. Every time I look at the large stone at the bottom, I see the face of a dude with big sideburns instead of the asteroid. Well, you know what? That's perfect that you would say that, because in the adventure, hold on, let me go find that content with you guys. Hold on, I'm going to open up the map here. We'll go on stream, development, document, link, the preview, and Patreon. Let's go to my Patreon real quick so we can look at that with you. YouTube stream there. Here's the document. This is like the master document of all of our shenanigans. It's a bear. What I need to do is create a separate playlist for the Spelljammer stuff. And look at that thing go. It's look at that thing go. 143, 166, 173, 188. All right, so we're in here somewhere. Oh, that's right. We're looking at Momma. So let's go down here. I think it's like around page 182 currently. There's the big boss fight in chapter 10, the astral journey, the different units you can trust issues, chaos and doom space. That was part 3. Boarding, last breath. Oh shoot, no, it's actually chapter 5. Oh, Momma is chapter 5. My bad, not chapter 6. All right, so chapter 5. Okay, so here's the map. Here's the different points that we have on the map, and I'll get back to it in a second. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This doesn't exist inside the current adventure. We created this map scenario. It's just to have more physical interaction with the game itself instead of it just being an ability check and an attack roll of like tracking down Momma and killing her. There's different points here in this asteroid field. Topolo's tower is here, but she chose this asteroid field because it's full of interesting stuff. And point number 3 is a dwarven statue, remnants of a massive statue. All that remains is an unknown eye staring endlessly. If Big Momma is found here, there's a 25% chance she'll regurgitate the remains of a dwarf skeleton in a fish suit. Fish suits are like space suits, so you can breathe in space without a ship. Intelligence or wisdom investigation check DC 22 will find stone carving tools near the eye. There you go. So yeah, this is an old dwarven statue artifact thing. We're not providing any specific information. Yeah, specifically supposed to be there. So that's great that you picked up on that. We may end up rotating the whole thing so it's not as obvious. Like we could do. Let's go with H. Hold on real quick. Let's go like since the lighting is radial, it doesn't matter which orientation the map has. So we could technically start the map like this and fool your eye into not necessarily seeing it right away. Yeah, so we can futz around with that. But I left it, because it's a human face, I left it in this orientation so that I can make sure I can set it right. But when we actually build the map, we'll probably rotate it 180 degrees so that it's not as obvious to you off the cuff. But whoever's looking at it's like, oh, there's a face here. So, because this is going to be a centerpiece, and it's a 20-inch map, so it's going to be a centerpiece on your kitchen table if you're playing in meat space. So, and again, it's even more obvious when you're looking at the black and white version. It looks kind of dwarfy, which was the intention. So I'm glad that you picked up on that, Ornetico. But yeah, when you're in assuming that you're not spending money on full color and like glossy finish or whatever, which you certainly could, I guess. But assuming that you're just playing this at home, this is the kind of map that you'll have. So yeah. So I'm happy. That's fantastic news, as intended. Let's go in here and get rid of that a bit. There. Lighting is good. We're on this channel right now. So okay, great. Here's the next one. That's the only one I've blatantly made the shape of something. I intentionally tried to avoid any kind of association with the other shapes. But once you see the one, you're gonna want to look around and see if there's others. So that's fun. It's been staring at me for like 3 streams, but I was sure enough to point it out until now. Like, is that an accident? Am I going to ruin Phil's day if I bring up that he's using the wrong fucking color? It's like, no, you will not ruin my day. If something feels weird, ask, because it could very well be an actual mistake. Like, that happens to me in color sometimes. I'll grab a bad color reference and I'll end up like painting somebody's skin gold or something. My gal constantly harasses me about that. Not because I do it wrong, because she's very supportive and I love her. But she's like, I hate it when you catch a mistake, because a lot of times the solution that you create is interesting. If not accurate, interesting. Like, God damn it, girl, I want accurate, not interesting. She's like, well, that's a shame because that was really cool. So she always makes me second guess myself when I want to second guess myself. It's like, you gotta triple check your shit because sometimes being wrong is cool. And like that's difficult for me to swallow. Because I got a chip on my shoulder about not being able to see the color, so I always want to make sure I'm doing it right. So I always want to use accurate color references because of the lack of confidence I have, and because I don't know what the hell I'm actually doing. so it's like, no, people, it's like, I can't be bold. I don't know what I'm doing. It's just fun. I'm being silly. But I'm being silly because I'm exhausted. So I think what I should probably do is take a sip of coffee and celebrate life with y'all. So yeah, there's you roll each day. The way that the adventure is currently set is that this space shark called Big Momma shows up and tries to, take swipes at her crew and eat stuff it's not supposed to, so it's a big conundrum for them. Lighting is like this, so I can block that off. So if she'll, the way the adventure is created is you'll get an orrery if, a Wildjammer orrery, if you help her get rid of Big Momma. Because for some reason the ship that you come in on doesn't have an orrery, which is it's a false MacGuffin that should be part of your ship. So with the mechanics that we built, orrery is basically built into the helm, but you can also have a standalone, like an extra orrery, if you want to have more stations. I mean, you can just stand next to the helm and still be able to make use of the orrery functions, but you can also have it as a standalone station. Like, you can have more people adjacent to you so that they can use their action economy to perform augur and support type actions from the bridge of the ship. But having an orrery built into, like you can just, if you're at a helm, you can just visualize the mapping that an orrery provides, the tracking that it does. But you're piloting, so you got things, you're doing stuff already. In combat, you're doing stuff. In just casual overland or what's the right term for that? It's while traveling between worlds, the pilot would be the one that would most sensibly have access to the orrery, because they're the one that becomes the eyes and the hands of the ship. So as you're flying through wild space, we have the charts for, like, what's the passive perception of noticing a person at 10 billion miles. Well, the DC is 25. So, like, if your passive perception is 25, you could potentially just see, like, a drifting human out in the void within a couple hours away from where you're at. Start that timer. But you also have people that can play an active role as an augur during combat to provide bonuses and like spellcasting support and whatnot as the ship as one of the ship roles, using one of those devices. So there's validity in offering an additional augur in this chapter, but it's part of the ship, so it's not like it's necessary for you to have it. So instead, what you do need is familiarity with both Doom space and Xaryxis space. Nobody on your ship has actually ever been there before, so it's a good potential 30-40 days for you to get there. If you pick up the space pirate or the space van pirate in chapter 6, he has familiarity with Doom space, but not necessarily Xaryxis space. So you can get familiarity that way, but it's not guaranteed you're going to have the space vampire on board with you. So you can get both an orrery, a spare orrery, as well as enough stories from Topola here while you repair your ship, that you can gain description status with traveling through astral space, which is 2d8 days, or roughly 10 days, like a week of travel time to get from here to Doom Space, and then the familiarity that she provides also about a week from here to Xaryxis, from Doom Space to Xaryxis Space. So Momma shows up D4 times per day, and when she shows up, she'll appear at 1d6, like she'll target 1d6 location. So whichever location, like if she rolls a 3, she'll be over by the Dwarven Face that time. If not, she'll be up here by the Sleeping Stone at number 5. And each point gives you a different advantage in your battle against her. So when the DM rolls, she can fly. She'll have a speed of 5. So she moves really fast, but she can't move faster than the 50-foot scale. Like she can move up to 1,000 miles per round, as opposed to a Spelljammer ship, which can move 10,000 miles per round. So your Spelljammer ship can move 10 times faster than these Scabbers can. So if you can catch her out, and you can but the orrery again, if she's only a huge sized creature. So that has a passive perception check on your orrery of a 22. So if during the challenge, if you spook her, she'll just yeet out of the asteroid system and then escalate up to 1,000 miles per round instead of being at the 50-foot scale. She'll ramp to the 500-foot, then to the 1 mile, then to the 10 miles, and then she'll just ramp up. Each movement cycle, she'll be able to upscale. So you've got basically 1 or 2 rounds to catch her before she'll be able to basically starburst out of range, and then you have to track her with the orrery through open wild space. And Scabbers are hunters, so they can do stealth checks to elude your orrery tracking. So the best way to do it is to wait for, she'll come back D4 times per day because there's good hunting here. There's space guppies, there's space eels, there were pelicans here, there's all sorts of flotsam and jetsam that the shark might want to chew on, including a dwarf. So there's opportunities for you to lure her, and if you can catch her, she doesn't last very long against ballistas. So if you have your, I mean, she's like a 100 and, I think she's like a 96, 100 some odd hit point creature. So for 4th level characters, you're only going to be 4th level by the time you get here. So that's going to be a decent challenge for 4th level characters. But if you're in a Spelljammer ship, you'll be able to shred her real easily. So it becomes a tactical issue. If you try to take her on yourself on foot, you're going to be jumping from asteroid to asteroid, and it's going to take you six spaces here on foot. All this is difficult terrain for you to move across. So in 1 minute, a character on foot can only move 3 squares. So Momma can move 60 of them in a minute. So she's going to literally be swimming circles around you and be able to do like flyby attacks and stuff and just chew you up. But if you can lure her out, like bait her into open space, then you can target her with your siege weapons and take shots at her. And if you can catch her, then you can take her out pretty easily. So that's the challenge of being able to draw her out, so that you can get good targeting on her. And if you just wing her, she'll bolt. She'll starburst out of there, and you won't have another chance potentially for the day. But she'll get hungry again, so she'll come back eventually the next day. So every time you wing her, you're reducing the amount of times that she's wanting to show up. She's going to want to heal. So but that's okay, because you need days to hear stories from Topola about the different systems, so that you can have that description familiarity to be to increase from described to be as though you had visited there, like seen it once. Like she can provide you with enough detail that feels like you've seen it once, so you can reduce the amount of travel time through astral to get there. So we're trying to so every failure you have in killing Momma gives you a bonus to how quickly you can get to the next system. So that's that failing forward philosophy that you hear people talk about in game design, where narratively it benefits the team to screw up. So the more time that you spend trying to hunt Big Momma, the more time you have to accumulate those stories for familiarity and to win favor from Topola to get the actual MacGuffin, which is knowledge. so that you can have that, and then you end up gaining an advantage on the check when you make the roll to actually travel to the locations that she's describing to you. So there's value added no matter what. So it's just time, and you're gonna need time to fix your ship anyway, because you just got out of a fight with a Rieger, which could very well have just torn your ship apart. So you could be dragging pieces of it back, here on the back of Kindori, which are also very slow. But the Scavenger's gonna love Kindori. Scavengers love eating Kindori. So if you had the Kindori, and they're basically going to be, if you let them go, great. But if you moor the Kindoris here and keep them until your ship's safe, it's going to be a massive temptation to Momma, to Big Mama. So she's going to want to try to come and eat your whales. So you can use them as bait to draw her in as well if you don't want to play rock skip, you know. So that's, anyway, those are the ideas behind that stuff. Let's see. So we're trying to finalize the mechanics for Spelljammer here, hopefully this week, and with the revisions that we made. It's difficult to break apart the roles and then put them back together again, and restructuring how combat and movements and weapons and stuff sit inside the documents, separated or maybe better fused to the roles. That's the challenge that I'm currently facing right now in rebuilding the document. But the playtesting has been invaluable, and because I don't want to just assume that the roles that I had built were good. The feedback that we got was that there's too many options, that we should simplify the roles so we can eliminate the support role and just or like the augur role, and just fold it into ship support in general, where you can do tracking from that quote-unquote role. I mean, the idea of it being a role at all is kind of fictitious, but that's the language. Like, there's things that you can do, they aren't bound to a specific role. That's the big difference that we have with these roles from Saltmarsh, that there is no specific role that you're actually performing. It's just, these are different things you can do with your action economy, and here's the different roles on a ship that are sort of associated with what those actions are. But you can be playing multiple roles at once. It's not necessarily a specific skill check like Saltmarsh presents, because we've diversified the role of the actions that you can take on a ship with the hazards and stuff, so that there's more options for each character to have various, like, it's not just a single type of ability check that means you're the boat swing. It's like that's on the, in Saltmarsh, I get why they had those roles, because you're on a traditional ship at sea, and maybe those roles make sense. But it's not player friendly. It's not group tactic friendly. Like, your whole group is on this boat. Your whole group is trying to save the boat from being destroyed. So it's siloing the roles into such narrow fields. Just doesn't feel right. It doesn't make the game flow properly, in my opinion. And so that's why we created these different role ideas and all these different options in those roles. But it's great that we had too many options, because that means that the idea is robust enough. Now we just need to make it more player friendly by trimming down the options, so that it feels a little more intuitive about, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing. So that's the process that we're fighting through right now. We were able to break up and reorganize gravity and distancing and sighting things. That's folding together more, I think, more intuitively now as well. So the document just flows better. Because there's a lot of content there. The first 60 pages of this is just like hard mechanics, but like it's all like exploration stuff. Like, how far away can I spot somebody? How easy is to stealth in on somebody? How can I hide in somebody else's gravity plane while stalking them? Stuff like that. That's like I was talking about in the last session. That's all in my world. That's all exploration pillar type stuff. So there's a pretty deep dive into just shenaniganing, you know, just noticing stuff and moving through things, and how well are you able to identify objects in space. Like, that's all that's all heavy narrative and exploration hard mechanics that need to be in the book that weren't there for 5e in the Spelljammer's Adventures in Space. They just left that up to the DM, but inexperienced DMs may need help with that stuff, which is what this document is doing, which is what all supplements are supposed to be doing, providing more narrative, more mechanical guidance on the narrative that you want to have inside of your game. So, yada yada, blah blah. It's time for another cup of coffee because I'm rambling hard. But that's what I geek out on. I geek out on that stuff. Get this thing done, and then we'll get the. We have the squadron mechanics for full-size Spelljammer ships, but we haven't really talked about flying Infernal war machines much in this document because we don't have. Since we're separating all the. Make sure I'm on course. Yeah, that's one we're doing. Since we're breaking up the document, the master document into multiple different products that can be bundled together for discounts, that way you can pick and choose what you want. Like you might not give a crap about Spelljammer, but you might want better war machine mechanics if you're playing Descent into Avernus. Like I want that stuff to be available for folks because like the flying war machines are absolute fighter ships in Spelljammer. But that's a lot of additional content that we have to add onto Spelljammer itself. So it's added content that we need to at least hint at because it'd be really useful to have an Infernal flying machine to be able to navigate through here, chasing after Big Momma on like a 15-foot skiff that you can power and move through here. And the way that I think I want to reorganize fighter ships is that the fighter ships themselves in space, they can't move nearly at the speed that Spelljammers can. So a Spelljammer pilot or the auger rule is basically providing power from the Spelljammer ship to allow the Infernal war machines to be able to navigate through wild space while they're within reach, while they're within the 500-foot space of the ship. Like they have to hop from gravity plane to gravity plane to keep moving. So you can't just fling them off into space by yourself. They have to be inside of a gravity plane to work. So they would be staying close to their mothership or the Spelljammer that they launched from. And so once you get to dogfighting range, where your two 50-foot spaces, like you're here and then your enemy ship is here, these two planes are connected, but this 500-foot square, they lock in combat. So now you can send fighter ships back and forth between each other. And if you guys get separated, then whatever fighter ships are over here are kind of abandoned and stuck here. They could float out of and then be abandoned and free floating in wild space on their own. And they have like basically 10 minutes for them to get to another gravity plane. Otherwise, they're just stuck adrift because they'll slow down and lose all their momentum. So that kind of binds how like these smaller ships where they can get to, so that the bigger Spelljammer ships are still necessary. You can't just jump in a 15-foot ship and then take off from there. I mean, you could strap a Spelljammer if you could build a Spelljammer helm, or if you can summon one, or if you want to pay for one being strapped into your ship, that's fine. You could do that, but you only have like 30 hit points on your Spelljammer, on your little microjammer, as it were. Microjammer, should that be the term that we use? But this is the stuff that we really need to consider adding into the actual document, so that you have these little jump ships as part of the core narrative of what Spelljammer is. Because we built Descent into Avernus first, so it's super intuitive just to give these war machines wings. Now they can fly around, and now they can. But the playtesting that we've been doing has been in the atmosphere of Avernus and Hellspace. So you've had that gravity plane to be able to work the Helljammer ships flying around. But once we take them out of gravity, then they're going to become dependent on the Spelljammer ship, and that's something that we get to play out in this map. But that's also something we have to add all the content to. So anyway, ramble on, yo. It's there's still some stuff that should be done, and that should only take a page or two to be able to add those things in. I'm just being, I'm trying to be conscious of content sprawl. of adding and adding and adding and adding more and more new things to the document, making it bigger and bigger. Like you can hide behind, you can hide inside finishing the product and sending it off as is by deciding you need more content and continuing to add it. And so I'm really aware of that. Now, I'm not afraid of having the document done. I am afraid of missing something. But that is its own decision paralysis that I need to be wary of, and like, you know, at what point am I delaying the launch of this, and am I screwing up other people's timelines? And what is actually needed to be changed. So I think the changes that we're making right now are necessary, but I don't think there's any additional changes beyond that are really, really needed. So anyway, rambling on, singing my song. Just trying to sort things out, you know. But it's gonna be a kick-ass document once it's done, man. This thing's gonna crush. I don't know if it's gonna crush or not. It's good mechanics, and the fact that we're building Light of Xaryxis into the offer is really useful. I've talked about this before, but like, people build alternate mechanic systems, but they don't have anything to actually use it in game. Like, you actually need to drop these things into the actual adventures that Wizards publishes, so that you can see, why is this useful? Why do I need this? If you're like, anything that you're building, there's shops, there's these shop ideas that people are coming up with, like running a business, and like, let's build a shop, and like they're mostly narrative. There's not a lot of mechanical chop that go behind them, other than like potentially getting a particular type of item. Like, if you have an armor shop, you can get discounts on building armor and stuff like that. It's like, I respect that, but there's no, like, you want to make sure, like, if you're building these shops, that you're building them into your game, so that you know why they're relevant to the adventures that you're doing. Like, shops are cute, but that's a real homebrew approach. Like, you don't really. I'm gonna save that for the next. There we go. Let's work on this guy Schlong. Working on this guy Schnogger. This face. Schnoz is the word I'm looking for. Sorry about that. Edit. I'm so tired. You got to get up early and get the work done if I'm ever going to get the product done. So that's where we're at. We're in production mode, which is Phil getting less sleep than he probably wants. And hopefully I'm not going to embarrass myself too much. Any more than I already have. Hey-o! How we doing on time? It is, oh, it's only 7. Cool. I've got about an hour, 40 minutes, hour. We'll see where I'm sitting. We still got some time here. It's Tuesday, so there won't be any stream this evening. This is hang time with the gal. So I'll be offline this evening. I'll be offline. I'll be back in the morning in about 23 hours from now. I'll be back at this. So we're going to see how far we can get in today's session to get this highlighting done, and then once the highlighting is done, we'll come back and we'll do the background space splash stuff as the background of this for the backdrop. So the printed tactical map, the black and white print tactical map absolutely doesn't need to have the space backdrop, because that's just a bunch of wasted ink. The whole purpose of a print friendly version is to make it friendly to your printer, to not exhaust it with ink. So making sure I'm on point there. So there's no need to have like a space backdrop in the black and white version of this map. I don't think I'm going to have this level of color, like this level of realism and color for the. Oops, I jumped to the wrong face. I am that tired. I'm working all fronts at once. Yeah, I don't plan on having this amount of rendering for most of the interior artwork that I do. I think I'm going to go with more of a sketchbook with a color splash style. I'm still figuring it out. I'm constantly compelled to add in as much depth of detail and color and stuff like that as I can in a document when I'm building the artwork that I'm adding to my product, because I'm like, if it's not color, it's below what I'm capable of doing. So I'm compelled to push myself to do the highest, quote unquote, highest quality that I can produce. But there's so many products that just rely on black and white. I really just need to think about what's the aesthetics that are going along with the thing. And so I think I can get away with. I even describe it as getting away, like I'm cheating, but that's not the point. I want to be able to create, like the cover should be the absolute highest pinnacle of work that's inside of the document, and so if I do a lighter, sketchier style with loose color, I think I can probably keep myself. I don't even know how many actual interior artwork pieces I'm going to need after I get all the layouts done. So I don't want to overcommit myself in one direction or another, because if there's only like 4 or 5 pictures that need to be created inside of the document beyond all the charts and all the blah maps and things, I may only need 4 or 5 interior illustrations, at which point, yeah, I can go ahead and afford to do color, but that's probably not how it's going to end up. If history is any indication, I'm going to want to throw as much artwork into this thing as I can, because there's not a lot of visual language for what Spelljammer is, especially the way that we do it. So I think the illustrations are useful to help create the feeling of like, how is this stuff supposed to work, but that's also potentially really demanding artwork. So I don't want to overcommit the style that I have to be able to have a decent production timeline to get these things done, which is why I'm really trying to strive to get to recruit people on board with me to help me write these things, so I can hammer out the ideas and then hand it off to somebody to help flesh out the writing and then the editing to go along with it, so that I can stay focused on the visual assets that need to go along with the piece, especially since we're doing adventure conversions with these different offerings that we provide. So that is proving to be a logistical challenge, which is just growing pains. It's just we're growing a business, so this is ultimately all businessy stuff we're trying to figure out. So I need to really sort out what's the topography of this eye here. Quiet time. Coffee. Quiet time is coffee time. Do. Man, this product's gonna be so good. So good. So good. There we go. Now we're on this row. So yeah, I can basically do one column of grid per hour. It seems to be how this is sussing out. It's not ideal. I ain't gonna complain about it. I'm gonna highlight here, and go back to here. There we go. Maybe it's just the coffee, but I am excited. I've got that swell of pride in my chest again. I'm looking at this. I know it's a good piece. If you're new here, you're swinging by. I'm Phil Kearney. I've been a freelance artist for a few decades on third-party publishing. Started with 3E back in like back in the 2000s. When I started doing. I was in my 20s. It's when I got to the point where I was good enough at art that people were willing to pay me to do it. So I started getting involved in the 3E design scene, producing artwork for various products that were on the shelves as third-party publishers. Nobody big like I'd say Natural 20 Press, Ian Publishing is probably the most notable publisher that people will recognize offhand. They're the folks that did the Advanced 5e Kickstarter project. I worked with them 20 years ago, putting together 3E NPC characters. I would do illustrations for NPCs and books of NPCs back when there were no books of NPCs for 3rd edition. They were some of the first to start producing those optional added characters with stats and stuff, and I got hired to illustrate a bunch of them. So I did, and various campaign settings that got published as independent role-playing games. There was a few of them that I had done, and a lot of individual commission stuff like character art and like landscape, environments, and stuff like that. But a lot of book cover work that I've been offered. So I've been around the RPG scene forever. It wasn't until 5e that I really got interested, and like as the economy continued to globalize, like with artwork and stuff, and the more people were able to recruit illustrators from Indonesia, and significantly lower living wage price point there, illustration on a machine like this is a pretty damn good deal from those countries. So it's really difficult to compete against them. So I realized somewhere in the two teens that my lifestyle in America is too expensive for me to just do ad hoc character illustrations without a following, and I wasn't interested in building a following at the time because it was too complicated for me to try to suss out. So I started building RPG products for on the DMs Guild because I wanted to get paid. I wanted to get paid an amount per art piece that I was proud of getting paid to do for the type of work that I was putting in. So I figured, well, the only person that's ever going to pay me the amount that I'm worth is me. So so I started creating my own books that I can now then illustrate, and they're very slow to build. But I like making books more than I like doing artwork for them. I think the artwork is a nice perk. But if I can get to a point someplace where I can hire other artists to produce this sort of thing, I think that's what I'm going to end up folding into, and trying to back out of the artist role and just go more into developer and project manager. But I think the artwork is going to be a good ticket, having quality products. Like, you know, this is the type of stuff that I build. Here's the type of revenue that we get from it. Kickstarter, hire artists, get on with it. As an art director, it's real iffy for me because I don't see color, so it's difficult for me to be an art director. It's easy enough for me to be an artist because I know what I'm trying to do and I can control the color feed on it. And so if it's a mistake, it's my mistake and I can own that. But it's a challenge for me to want to hire other artists to produce color assets, because again, I don't, it's a difficult role for me to take on. So I think that's something that's hindering my growth, is that fear of accountability. Like, I can't hold color artists accountable because I don't know what they're doing. So it's a real stumbling block for my production cycle, or my growth curve. But I think it'll eventually suss itself out. But that is a unique challenge that I am facing. So it's I may find myself staying in the seat of artist until I can figure out how that works out. But that's like a long-term goal of like how to build that trust to be able to hand over. Like if I don't like the contrast in a piece, like the only thing I have to judge by is the contrast. Like I can sweep across color coding, but if I don't notice a subtlety in one of the colors, I might not have a comment on that as a director, and so I can't guarantee the quality I'm going to end up being getting, and that's pretty frustrating. But we'll suss it out. That's one of my growing pains. That's one of my challenges in developing this as a business. As I spin the brush around, it breaks up the pattern and causes some texture to get built into it while fading the light down, so it's not overwhelming. So that's the duplicity of that process, to make sure that I get that good gravelly look going on, good grill marks. So because of those mechanical limitations that I have, it's, I think probably the best way for me to be able to build a business out of this is by what I'm doing, is by, you know, going through this process of building things on stream and building that audience connection, to build my tribe, as it were, of folks that just kind of get what I'm doing and are interested in seeing where it's going and support me to do it. And I think there's a place. I think I can actually build that out. That is my hope. We'll see. We will see. Hey, if you're new, you haven't checked this place out before, I'm Phil. I build books. Right now we're working on the asteroid field, which is, it's not chapter 6, I have that mistaken, it's actually chapter 5, Oh Momma, and the Light of Xaryxis adventure. It's a fun adventure, there's cool stuff in there. I had been flacking on Wizard of the Coast for being so thin in their content, and I think it's absolutely fair to continue giving them static about that. But the bigger picture, from a designer perspective, they're really the adventure has enough. It has all the beats to get you from start of the adventure through conclusion, but it does for you to flesh it out as like a full campaign that's going to last more than, say, 3 months. You can. There's a lot of opportunity to expand the challenges and encounters that are presented in the Light of Xaryxis adventure as written. Everything that's in there is sufficient. It gets you to where you want to go, but they also had a severe page limitation on like if they had an open like an open bar for however much content they wanted. I mean, they had a 64 page limit to be able to span 4 levels from 5 to 8, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's only 3 levels. So what is that, like about 21 pages per level that they had for this? I mean, that's a really tight constraint. So I think Sadie and Justice and crew that lent hand in building this thing did a great job with the space limitations that they had. They really put a cohesive story together, but I think it'd be great for Wizards to kind of own how thin the actual content is. But I mean, they're not going to say, hey, this is an insufficient product, good luck. That's just stupid marketing, and that's not how they're framing it. But that's the reality of what it is. Like, this is the bare bones to get you from the front to back end of the adventure that they printed in that book, and it really is on us DMs to flesh it out. But it's always on us DMs to flesh it out. So that isn't a technical complaint that we can lean behind, but we can express irritation that like the Dragonlance book that's coming out. It's not a campaign setting. If you want to know about the campaign, Wizards is really offloading that task onto you to be able to find that information online, because they're not reprinting old material. Like, you could always go back and buy the first edition, like Talantis, for example, or whatever that second continent is on Kryn, that they eventually came out at the tail end of 2E. Like, that's something that's still out there that you can purchase and print on demand, as you know, all the content of that box set. But they aren't even really saying, hey, here's a link to DMsGuild where all this content exists for super cheap if you want to build a campaign out of it. I think that's a real shortfall, because they could be getting paid for all that. Like, if it's only like 5, like if you wanted a PDF of the original first edition Kryn stuff, all the character mechanics are irrelevant, but there's a lot of lore in there. Like, I think it'd be smart for them to at least be referencing that stuff online. It's like, hey, here's a lot of history and lore from previous editions that are still relevant and will add a lot of depth to this adventure supplement that we've created that uses 5e mechanics, but all the flavor of these settings that existed in first and second edition, here they are on the cheap, like PDF, super cheap. Here you go, buy on the DMsGuild, and while you're there, here's a whole ribbon of other stuff that's relevant from third-party producers that we get a cut of. So go support their work. Like, that could be what Wizards is doing, but it's almost like there's an air of, if we don't build it ourselves, they got to be careful. They can't prop up one specific writer, because then there's the issue of favoritism, and then they get potentially pulled into identity politics, which is death to any kind of brand. It's a real difficult thing for them to navigate, but they could be at least passively pointing, hey, here's a repository of content that we produced in the past that you can get access to if you want to look at more of the flavor that went along with these campaigns when they were first published. Like, that would be, I think that'd be a super cool thing for them to do, and I don't think that would be pushing out favoritism at all. These are assets that they own. They're still marketable. All that flavor text from first edition is still viable for you to be able to use in this campaign. It's just that we have to have the intuition to go look for it ourselves And then the biggest complaint among the old guard like myself has been, where's the flavor? Well, the flavor still exists, but it's not being promoted. Where's the Inhuman Wars, like Elven armadas versus orc, the Skrull, the space orcs, and the greenskins. Like where's the presence there? That's the major complaint from folks that were around in second edition about these products. Like, we know there's a lot more depth here than what's being offered to us. So folks ask, why is it so thin? Wizards is making money hand over fist the past year during the pandemic. Where's the investment in world depth? And like that is not, they don't have the bandwidth or the permission for the production cost to rebuild all that stuff and create these robust products. That's what drove TSR out of business in the first place, is how much depth there was in all these products. And all that stuff is still out there now, but it killed TSR. Absolutely sunk them. Like, the production cost of all these print products was just massive, and they didn't schedule it properly. So I think Wizards is being very aware of how much they're investing in the production of stuff that may not actually have a lot of fan support. Like, second edition, old school guard like myself can potentially be very vocal about our complaint about lack of information. But if they're trying to get the new, they know that us old guard are on board with D&D regardless of what edition it is. So there's not a lot of growth. There's not a lot of growth option there for them. They want to target the new players, and they can reframe the conversation of how this material is being presented to be more production friendly from their side, and changing the experience that new players have, which a lot of old guard feel like they're cheating these new players out of that experience. But I gotta say, if that's what you believe, you need to build new players. You need to like, you can't just sit in your second edition swamp and be grognards about it. Like, you need to be sculpting how new players play, like how they approach the game, and if your ideas of how the game is supposed to be played is resonating with new players that you're recruiting, then congratulations, you're building the next generation of gamers in your own image. You're siring new gamers, which is how this hobby is transmitted. It's face to face, or at least you're building a campaign space with other players, and you're building the culture around it yourself by how you resolve conflicts, how you handle session zeros, what kind of interactions at the table as NPCs, players, background stories, on top of just the social agreements between the players that are playing. That's all the culture of the game that we have to develop and build ourselves, because each table has its own culture. So we have to kind of own that as part of the process. And we can't offload all that stuff angrily on the Wizards as being, this is your responsibility to build this game for us. It's not really. It's kind of on us. So I don't blame Wizards for trying to build a business model to keep producing this content. That has to happen if we're going to continue seeing, beholders in the community game space moving forward. Otherwise, it's going to be relegated to more and more individual silos of grognards that are like, this is how the game is supposed to be played. Like, if there's no content being produced by an official source, then it's all just homebrew at that point. And your opinion isn't any better than mine. But it's the broadcasting, it's the signal strength of this is what the game is that Wizards is really providing to the community. Like, this is how. Here's the content that we're producing for you guys to interact with. Now, how do you want to build your culture around that? And that it really is not their responsibility to build a gaming culture. They're producing the content from which a culture can be built. So you can't really be angry at them. It took us as gamers decades to figure out what's good game ethics, what's good table etiquette, and all that stuff. You can't really learn from a YouTube channel. You can hear about it, but you really have to, as the Matrix would say, you have to experience it for yourself. You have to log in those hours, and you have to struggle with interpersonal dynamics. And like, I don't like this guy. And like, his story constantly is undercutting the kind of fun that I want. Like, that's the struggle that you as a player, as an individual, have to um, dig your way through. But the swipe culture exists even in D&D. Like if you don't like this gaming table, you can just jump on Roll20 and find a different table, and you can duck out of games. So getting a commitment for people like I want to run a campaign from level 1 to 20. Are you going to bail on me if you don't like how this session went and I can't build anything around you? What kind of commitment can I get from you to stick around for the next year to build this thing out? Like a swipe culture is like, I didn't like how this date went, so I'm never going to talk to you again. I'm just going to ghost on you after I get whatever fun I get out of it. Like there's no need for commitment, but role-playing games is worse than dating, because I need you to show up every week for the next 60 weeks. Are you capable of doing that? If you can't, then there's no room for you at my table. I need somebody that's going to commit so that I can lock down a 20-level campaign that's going to take a year and a beat to complete. Like if you're not down with that, don't step up, because that's a table space that somebody else might really value. And if you're just kind of dipping your toes in this, then go ahead and dip your toes and jump into a pickup game to see if you like the role-playing thing, but you're going to be missing out on that character growth and that camaraderie, which could easily spill into a conversation about, whatever the app is. It's, us folks that got partners before the dating app surge. I think it's Tinder. I don't know, whatever it is that people are using to ghost each other through. But you can't really do that with a campaign. You have to commit. You have to commit to people that you don't necessarily like, which is the eternal struggle of, hey, I don't like my table. I need to obviously you need to switch out if it's an abusive circumstance. But like if the gaming is good, and there's just some personality stuff, you need to apply social pressure, which can just make people bail. Like if you feel like you're being shamed through peer pressure into different social norms at like, this is how we respect each other's time and space here at this table. Like if you're not down with that lesson, you're just going to bail. And then you're not going to learn anything, and you're not going to be able to carry on better game ethics to the next table. So there's a real accountability issue, I think, is probably the best way to summarize what's going on with game culture these days. It's just a micro expression of the swipe culture built into Tinder and app dating. It's the same thing. You're trying to find a partner of like 3 or 4 different people that you can form, your SEAL Squad 6 around. Like, here's our commando squad. I better like our communications officer, because I'm not going to like communicating with him if I don't. Like that's the kind of struggle that we're facing right now in gaming. At least that's how I'm perceiving it. Your opinions may vary. Feel free to drop in the comments any counter statements or ideas that you have about swipe culture impacting game longevity for building campaigns. Like the local gaming store is fragmenting. So like that used to be a place where you could shake hands and look people in the eye and learn to trust them as comrades in arms. That's kind of like what's so cool about role-playing games is like you get to build your own commando team of people that you learn to trust and have your back. Like that's how you build friendship. That's how you learn to trust people. That's how you can build relationships, and that's something that needs developing and protecting. And that's I think the coolest thing about RPGs is like they can help build that. Like people I gamed with are still people that I would trust with my life, my family, my being in my home without me being around. Like gamers are the people that I trust to do this stuff. So I think I'm in this column right now. In that column, there we go. 7:30. We're getting close to time. So let's just keep pushing on. I love doing this stuff. I love texturing. I love environmental stuff. I love just rocks. I love painting rocks and boulders and stuff like that. This stuff is fun. It's just, I love the texture and the diversity of materials. It's cool, fun stuff. It's fun stuff to do. Like this is a destination unto itself for my heart. Like I am immensely satisfied with being able to produce things like this. It's super, super fun. The maps I built for my own game are absolute garbage. It's like it's like a curved box, like curved lines, square box with like a hatch mark for where the door is supposed to be. Like just the absolute, I've talked about this before, the worse your map is, the lower you keep your map standards at your table, the less they know when they're off script. Like if they can't tell, like if I present this full color map, it's like, hey, here's an encounter we want to do. It's like, well, we want to be over here someplace. Like, well, I don't have a map for that, so sorry. That creates that conflict, you know? It's, what was I working on? I was here? Yeah, that's where I'm at, thank you. So in my own personal games, I keep the maps as garbage as possible, so you'll never know when I'm improvising or when I'm actually on script with something that I planned. If it all looks like shit, you'll never know the difference. That's my biggest problem with high quality color map assets that people purchase. Is like, it's really, if you purchase this, if you spend it like the playtest that I had the other day for 15th level, somebody was specifically using a subclass because they spent $90 on the book, and like, I put a ton of money in on this book, I'd like to use it. And it's like, that makes total sense to me. But now that's a really good case in point about objectives. Like, why am I going to use this map? How is that going to limit what my players are going to have ability? Like, I'm going to drive them and force them to interact with this map because I paid $40 for this map, for instance. You're not going to pay $40 for this map with me. You're going to pay like $20 maybe for like the Light of Xaryxis and all the mechanics that go with it, and you can voluntarily not pay for it. So like, you know, there's, but other people will pay stupid amount of money for like a Kickstarter project for some maps or something. And it's like, well, how committed, how much is that binding you to using those maps now? And your characters will your players will absolutely know when you're not on script with that map, because they're moving off of it, and you're like, well, now I can't use this asset, and I'm feeling salty that I spent all this money on this thing and I can't do anything with it. Like, I absolutely encourage you not to do that with the 50 Galaxy Brain advice. Thanks, man. But it's true. It's like it's true. It's like, these things are expensive, and it normally falls on the DM to buy all of it, which sucks. Which is why I keep thinking that the reason they keep bringing in all these Microsoft employees to run Wizards of the Coast is because they want to move into that Gloomhaven Unreal space, where you can play as a AI generated script to run around inside a Gloomhaven Steam space have, you know, that's your new adventure league. We're going to construct these maps, and we're going to type in scripts for what your player options are. You know, pick 1, 2, or 3, and that'll open up the secret door, or it'll take you to the next scene, or it triggers a trap, and now the dice roller is going to automatically do the perception check of, oh, you notice a secret door, so now the secret door is going to highlight because the automated script triggered that you saw it. Like, it's going to take, it can potentially take the humanity out of the table. And people are like, well, RPGs are community experiences. But only for people that have actually played. If you can't find a table, or if you hate every table that you stumble into, but you want to be part of the D&D experience, this Gloomhaven Unreal option becomes more and more tempting. So, I mean, there's already that D&D app game where it's like you can take a certain amount of moves every 10 minutes or whatever, and you're just basically going through a choose your own adventure in the exact same way. And there's old D&D choose your own adventures, which is like, roll your dexterity check. If you roll below a 13, go to this page number. If you roll above 13, go to this page number instead. And it's like, success equals this page, failure equals this page. And that can absolutely be gamed in a choose your own adventure novel, but in an Unreal Engine, it's going to click those things over, and it's going to commit you. It's going to hard commit you unless you have some sort of a save point built in. That once you make a decision, there you go. Kind of like what was that? Like Tomb Raider and stuff, when you're doing these environmental puzzles, like Legend of Zelda and stuff like that. All these things are environmental puzzles that you're manipulating through the user interface. So that could absolutely be a thing, and I don't think they'd be pulling in so many expensive recruits from Microsoft if that wasn't their intention. Because if they can sell the product to 5 players instead of 1 DM, that's how they're going to be able to meet their growth cycle for their product. But it risks killing the heart of the game. So as concerning as arguably is that they seem to be taking this direction, I totally understand the logic. Yeah, absolutely, me too. The solo adventure toolkit on DMsGuild still is one of my favorites. I use solo adventures from DMsGuild when I'm playtesting mechanics on stuff. If I'm like, I don't know if this is a thing, I will build a character and I will run them into a solo adventure and I will grind the dice myself. And it's like, oh, I got killed there. Well, obviously it's not overpowered. So after I get killed more often than I succeed, like if I always win the solo adventure challenges, then I know what I'm presenting is too powerful. If I've got a 50-50 kill rate, it's like, okay, this is something I can take out and I can push off to other people because the mechanics are sound enough that it's not just unbalanced by itself. You can always, like, I love that about the solo adventure stuff, like the solo adventures that are already present on DMsGuild. Absolute fan of that stuff, and it's fun. I did all of those D&D choose your own adventures because I didn't actually have a table for the first 2 years that I became enthralled with D&D. Like I had to build my own stuff. I just couldn't get anyone to play, and there was no internet for me to find. It took me a couple of years for me to finally find in high school, like in junior high, like at 12, 13, I didn't actually have a table until 14, and then I started. You know, so at 2 years, I was like narrating and building characters and creating campaign worlds and creating Spelljammer ships and like thinking about how could they be applied. And so when I actually found a table to start running a game, like I had this huge backlog of ideas. It's like, finally, I have somebody, because when it's just yourself, you can just fudge, you know, you can fudge your die rolls to get the results that you want, to have the experience that you want. But that's not actual role playing. Actual role playing is no regrets, no going back, YOLO, and FOMO can't exist. Like solo stuff, FOMO, fear of missing out. You can always go back and check out the other option, but in a live table, it's YOLO. You only live once. Of course, in D&D, that's not actually true, because you can resurrect. What would be? You only resurrect forever. Yorf. You only resurrect forever. But the consequences is what you avoid in solo play. You can lie to yourself about, well, I mean, this is my experience. I want to play this. I want to check out what the other path was, because again, I want to make use of the content that I purchased. So what was the other comment? Even if it isn't the same as a campaign with multiple people, it's still a satisfying game experience. Yeah, just the same game, just not the same gameplay experience. Absolutely, absolutely. But the more we drive ourselves into these solo adventure ideas, the more we're breaking apart the community. And you had to have community to have a game back in the day. Now community is an option. So again, you can swipe left, swipe right on gaming groups, and you don't build those. You don't build that ethic of how do I deal with character conflicts. Most of these people, the answer is I run away. You know, I'm just going to find another group, or I'm going to solo because it's a pain in the ass. It's like, well, if you have to deal with people to have a game, then you're going to be highly motivated to figure out how to interact with people. But that doesn't build customers. You know, if they give you the experience that you want, they can have customers, but at the same time, they're not locking in customers for the long term. It's like, I'm just gonna go back to Diablo. See you later. Like, it's kind of self-sabotaging. It's a really big experiment, and it's a costly, expensive experiment that they're going on with. But how else are they gonna do it? You know, like, I don't begrudge them at all. I'm just noticing the differences. And these are things that, like, if you're new to the game, you don't realize necessarily, like, this is psychology that's going on along inside your head while you're considering, is this a hobby I want to invest money in on? But people that have been around for a long time, they can see the difference in the culture and like the tools that are available to use that culture and that swipe. I keep talking about swipe culture. It's absolutely something that needs to be contended with when you're building a table. So stable games is, as always, going to come from first-party relationships. People that you have no problem with walking through your door and handing a beer. You know, I walk into your home. It's like, hey, I'm going to grab a beer. It's like, Phil, I'm glad you're here. Yeah, grab a beer. Jump in here. We're doing a thing. Like when I was in college, Doom was new. And so in our dormitory, there'd be open doors. Everyone whose door is open, you hear, it's like, oh, that guy's playing Doom. Let's jump on board and let's tear each other up. And these people lean out of their door and like laugh at each other and taunt each other because we didn't have a headset to taunt each other online. We'd have to literally shout down the hallway. It's like, I schooled you, buddy. He's like 4 doors down. And he's like, screw you. And like, you know, the dorm admins would come by and yell at us at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like, dude, there's people that are actually trying to sleep. This is college. Stop playing Doom, or close your door. So then people would start building LANs. Like people would move out of their room into somebody else's room, so they could just open up the entire room space, just have a bunch of desks and computers all LAN networked, so we could all fuck around with each other on an intranet that wasn't actually connected to the worldwide. So that was a different time, man. That was a very, very different time. But the values that we learned from those times are very different from the values that we're learning now. And every time, like, you can argue about the influence of societal overstructures like church and stuff, but if you keep walking backwards in time, like, church was a safe space where you wouldn't get mugged and killed, where you can interact with other people of different sexes as you're attracted to them, and those social norms set the rules of what was acceptable for you to be able to express your passion and your feelings. And as things become decentralized, we gain the value of, I want to be able to express my life this way. And the more and more we pulled away from, like, say, church as a central structure that provided that, as society became safer, safe haven points of lights like your church mixer became less and less important. But it also left people on their own with less guidance on how to have a satisfying experience. Like, if you aren't satisfied with the experience that church would bring you, you had to create your own environment where you could be satisfied with the social interactions that you're now hosting and promoting, so that you can have what you want outside of the church. I'm not necessarily a proponent of church, but I recognize its role in society at the time, when there needed to be a safe place to engage and interact with each other without threat of harm, especially for women that were less capable of protecting themselves against, you know, giant burly men with axes. That societal structure became really important, considering how lethal childbearing was, and the lack of that protection in society would lead to potentially lethal bearing of children that you didn't necessarily want, but you're stuck with it. So there's a lot of biology that goes behind how society was set up that we were able to tear apart in a more digital environment where it's your individuality. There's no actual meat flesh attached to who you are as a person online. You may be a bot. So, but at the same time, it's that change in cultural and social interaction is removing the need to understand, like, how do I play nice in your team? I can ditch your team if I don't like your ethics, and I can try to find another one, which leads you to infinitely trying to find something you can be satisfied with. What's your tolerance? What's your tolerance for dissatisfaction to get the fix that you want of social interaction? And the answer is more and more. I don't have to endure any risk, but I won't have any true satisfaction either. So that said, I remember doing a lot of LAN stuff. I was really little. When I was really little, it was good times. This is what walkie-talkies are for, Phil. Yeah, you're absolutely right. But then you have to press the button to walkie-talkie, and you're taking your hand off of the keyboards. Now, if I can trick you into taunting me, I can headshot you. Goodbye. But yeah, I'm just rambling. I'm fortunate enough to have been on board with this whole gaming experience really early on in society that I have the opportunity to actually see where things are moving and changing. And I don't begrudge the experience. I'm just, like I said, I'm just recognizing it. I've got like 8,000 hours on Roll20. So I mean, obviously I'm a VTT enthusiast. So and I've had the opportunity to see how that pickup game culture online actually plays out, where I've gone through hundreds of applicants, and so many of them will show up for a game and then ditch because there was just one thing they didn't like about the game. It's like, God, what's it going to take for me to find a stable crew? It's difficult on Roll20 just to find people that are willing to stick around. Like, you gotta, like, I have a huge edge. It's like I'm offering, hey, roll like a 1 to 20 campaign. It's going to take 60 weeks. Are you on board with that? Yes, no. And if you're not, then get out. So anyway, that's me rambling. Rambling for days. Ramble Phil, they call me, I guess. No, they don't. They don't call me Ramble Phil. But if you don't have the opportunity to accumulate those experiences, you don't have anything to compare it. You can't really say, oh, back in my day, blah-de-blah, it's long tooths. It's like you have to be able to express that. Like, what is the difference? What are people actually missing out on, and what are you going to do to fix it? Like me, I built a new team of people that never played before, and their first experience with D&D is a 20-level campaign. 1 to 20, you're the heroes, here you go. This is the breadth of it. I can provide these experiences for you. Good luck finding it someplace else. You're gonna be looking for it. But this is like some of these guys that are already branching out, trying to look for other groups. It's like, God, Phil, you're spoiling us. It's like, yeah, I've ruined gaming for you. I'm your first experience. No pride, modesty aside. It's your first experience of playing D&D is a 1 to 20 campaign that you had the list of parameters that you wanted to have. This is the experience you asked for, and I will deliver it to you thoroughly on a weekly experience until it's done. And it's like, if I really wanted to do them a favor, I'd say, great, let's play, and then like ditch them and ghost them for 2 or 3 months. Like, that's the actual gaming experience. Cheers. But our table is players 25 to 50. So, and there's a lot more commitment the older the player gets. It's interesting. So it's just interesting. When the younger ones want to show up and stick around, it's like, great, we got space for you. Show up and play. But they're not the ones that are going to reliably show up over and over again. At least at our table they haven't been. So we had to build the game where you can pick up or drop off. So that had to be built into the session 0. We need a game environment where people can choose to just bail, and then be able to come back in, because my current table is co-workers. So it's like a club at our game where people are welcome to be. And so we have to build in that acceptance of, I might not want to be here next week. We have to be gentle on our cultural, what's the word I'm looking for? The peer pressure has to be gentle. We can't threaten to ditch people because we don't like how they are. They have to be included because it's a work environment thing, which is awesome. Being a sanctioned work activity is pretty cool. The D&D lunch club, as it were. Not a lot of new applicants come through, but occasionally we grab somebody new. So the next campaign we're trying to make it a little bit more open-ended, so that so that we can have, it's not an ongoing campaign. It's just episodic dungeons, like a different dungeon each month, and like here's some pre-gens that you can throw in. That's how we're trying to build a new format for the next campaign after this one ends. So because the 1 to 20 campaign, it absolutely becomes, once you start getting around, if you start at level 1, by the time you get to level 11, everything is so inbred and inside personal jokes, it becomes very difficult for new players to be able to interact and feel like, it takes months for them to feel like they understand what's going on. And I can drop a brief description of something, and the people that have been there since level 1, they're like, oh, because they know what that means. But the new people are like, what is that? What is this? And okay, well, we only have an hour and a half of lunch, and it's going to take about a half hour to explain this. So do you got some time after work to talk about it? No. It's like, okay, well, I guess this is just going to stay in the dark for you until you get it. It's difficult. It's having a more pickup, light fare gaming where it's just dungeon delving without deep character commitment experiences. That's where we're going to need to go if we're going to keep growing the table with our coworkers, which is what we want to do. There's a lot of new blood that's coming in, and it seems like a lot of them are online gamers that may very well really enjoy D&D if they can be introduced into it in an environment where they can be supported, which is what we're trying to offer. But we have to finish off this campaign to fulfill the promise that we had to each other to have a full 20 campaign, and then we can step out of that into a more episodic campaign experience that'll be open-ended for other people to jump into. So, and then if I switch playtesting to Saturdays, then we can potentially pull some of those people into the VTT space and have real space people that are interested in having a longer form campaign other than just episodic dungeons. Like, I really like this RPG thing, what can we do? It's like, well, I run a playtest on Saturdays, so if you want to participate in that, you are welcome, and we'll just be doing experimental stuff. It's like, well, that's not a full 20 level campaign, so it's like, I gotta figure out how I can continue having playtest content and be able to have a long form 20 level campaign at the same time. The point of doing these products is to build a better environment for people to play games in, but if I don't have the time or space to commit myself to a long-term campaign, what good am I actually doing to anybody with this stuff? I keep professing, if I'm going to build supplements, it needs to be something that can be built, that can actually be used in your game, but I'm the one that needs to be demonstrating how these things can be built, how these things can be built and ran in the campaign, because it's my build, it's my product. I'm the one that's responsible for making these things work, for people to see them. Proof in the pudding, that sort of thing. So we're at 7:54. I've got 3 minutes left on the clock. This is, man, we are getting dunzo. So I'm going to be back at this again tomorrow morning. And we just cleaved through 5 lines of the 8 that we had left. So absolutely, it looks like in the next 2 hours tomorrow, the next 2 hours that we have to build this stuff, it looks like we'll complete this asteroid field tomorrow. Oh man, that felt good. I'm going to hit the save button. We'll come back and we're going to finish up this outer edge here. That should probably, I reckon that'll take an hour maybe to do. And then we can start dropping in the backspace, the backdrop, the space backdrop in the background here. And then that'll finish the piece. Hopefully, I think tomorrow we'll finish the asteroid field. And that probably means by Friday morning this will be done. We'll be done with this map. And then next week on Monday we'll start the Night Spider space map with different types, and I can grab some of these asteroids and drop them in there to shortcut the process of building things. But this map is at 50 feet per square. The Night Spider challenge will be at 500 feet per square, where your Spelljammer ship can fit inside of one square. And like if you've got your Spelljammer ship here, and like you move into a space that has an asteroid with it, you're gonna have to do a piloting check to prevent scraping your nose or bumping into this thing, taking some crash damage. So obstacles, like we'll have to build the map a little differently. So there's more obviously you can increase your elevation to get above the asteroid fields. But if you hop up out of the asteroid field into plain space, then you're a sitting duck. You can get shots taken on you. So targeting becomes an issue. You want to stay hiding inside of the asteroids as much as you can, so you're not taking direct fire as often, so that you're not a sitting duck, as it were. So because you're being chased by a superior foe, you're trying to use your wits and outsmarting them and creating a space where you can get away from them. Just as though kill that. That's the end of the session. Yeah, but like. And this map comes later, so there's the Yogi Spider where you're being hunted through the asteroid field and you try to get away, and that information will drag into this one where you are hunting, and you'll know what can happen with the scavenger to try to get away because you were trying to get away. So you'll be able to use that same thought process going into this encounter. It's like, I know what it's like being hunted, so we can approach this from the hunter's perspective, so you have both sides of that equation. And then the next encounter after this one is you hunting a ship in a nebula where you have limited visibility, which we play tested a couple weeks ago, which worked out well enough. It's just an obscurement field where you're just trying to track something using your orrery to try to get their signal where they're at, so you can close in and capture them and take the ship, which is what Chapter 6 is really all about. So I need to fix all the postings. It's not Chapter 6, it's Chapter 5, so I'll fix that. But that's all we have for today. I'm going to yeet out of here. Like, subscribe, blah, blah. I really appreciate y'all being on board. I will be back again tomorrow morning. We'll finish up this map and we'll keep doing stuff. I'm not sure how fast the product's going to come out, but this is kind of the product unto itself, is talking about like where all this stuff came from. It's an experience. I hope you're enjoying it with me. And I'll see you guys on the other side. Have a great day.